Okay, hello everyone, welcome to this evening's episode. I am slightly bit more fatigued today, this evening, this night, but I thought I'd share an episode. I'll begin by saying that the title, "Where Else Can Sight Go?" occurred to me, and there's a sort of attitude I have to life where I don't know if there's others who share it, there probably is, but the attitude I have to life is that it's a very simple framework of what I see. You see, there's a huge emphasis on materiality. It's as if eyes open, there is a world. And not only is this world immensely vast, there is such a vast existence, but there is also this placement of the temporary. We are mortal creatures. So it's as if there is this rock in the middle of nowhere floating. Creatures have emerged on it. And these creatures look at the world and look at themselves. And the world is way more unknown than any way we have attempted to know ourselves. So for me, the view I have is as if, okay, there's a sight here, there's eyes here. There is a sort of perception here. Where can this perception go? What can 8 billion creatures floating in the void do or see? The world again is so vast that it's as if, like, was it really made for us? You know, it's as if the clergy during the time of Galileo, you can say the Inquisition even in Spain, you know, Galileo was sentenced to house arrest because he suggested an idea that we are not the center of the universe. And before him, there was also Copernicus. So even though now we know that physically we're not the center of the universe, when it comes to humanizing everything that we see, we are acting as if we are the center of the universe, even though physically we know. For example, the Earth is orbiting around the Sun, and the Sun is orbiting around something else, and like the whole thing is theorized to be orbiting around a giant black hole and whatnot. I may be actually too tired for this episode, but anyways, I'll keep going. What can I say? There are creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. What we call our consciousness is attention and existence being simultaneous, being instant. When we look in front of our eyes, we see known dimensions to the world, things we can see, the observable universe, and we see unknown dimensions, that which is unobservable. And when we come to our, pretty much when we close our eyes and when we are seeing phenomena such as memory and visualization in what I call the inner realms, there is also the known and the unknown, observable phenomena and unobservable phenomena. Unobservable phenomena of the mind has been given the word subconscious, but I would say that's only from a position that the brain is the center, is like the solipsistic center of our perception. I would say something in the sort of when I as a human being wonder about where else my sight can go from this moment, I noticed that first of all, sight, in what is sight, is like the brain is like a candle flame. The consciousness is like the glow of the candle. The candle flame is the neural activity in the brain. The wick of the candle is, and the body of the candle is like the rest of the human body. So in a sort of space of observable phenomenology, the attention awakens when we wake up in the day. It's as a first-person point of view from the body. Excuse me. It's first-person point of view. We have this vision that it's as if we're looking out of our eyes. However, when we close our eyes and let's say when we look out, what do we see? We see a physical mover, the body, and then we see the physical movement, which is the world and the physical nature. Now, what's fascinating that when a person closes their eyes, they see physical, they see, you can say, image-based movement, physical image-based movement, which is like they can perceive a world. But the thing is that it seems to be, rather than a physical movement or a visible movement, think of it this way, in front of your eyes, visible movement, visible mover. Behind your eyes, it is visible movement. You can still perceive, visualize, and have memory, but it is an invisible mover. This invisible mover has been the mystery that many mystical traditions have sought after, and we find statements from the Vedas where it says the seer of the seen is unseen. I believe this is in the Rig Veda. Now, there are also people such as a man whose name I probably will have problem pronouncing, Siddharameshwar Maharaj. He has this interesting quote where he says, "Desirelessness is the only food that helps turn towards the reality and attain self-realization." It's as if in front of our eyes, where it's the domain of objects where we can touch. It's as if when the desire from an object to be an object goes away, and the sort of desire to be a specific subject goes away, there remains nothing else other than the sort of ultimate reality. So the mystics have been trying to realize that they have been from the beginning, beyond even the notions of time or any subject, the invisible mover. Now somebody would say, hey, Mr.Within, if we consider a mover, that's still a shape, because how else would we know it's moving? This is where the mystery of the mind and the exploration into the mind's room becomes really fascinating. What can you do when you notice that you are just sight? That means if a person closes, just sits somewhere still, and they also close their eyes, the only thing that they can be, if their body's not moving, and in some sense their eyes are not open, is just awareness. You see, when we open our eyes, consciousness is conditional to things, When we close our eyes, we are aware, and so we are aware of a space, and I can say that in front of our eyes it's like a public server, but behind our eyes it's a private server where every person is viewing life differently and probabilizing it differently, having different probabilities of it, and then making a decision, and then their physical body moves and acts upon it, and all of this is happening in a very short time frame. So, in some sense, what I'm saying is that, first of all, sight is consciousness. Or you can say that there is awareness flowing through the senses, or receiving reality through the senses. Now, I consider this awareness to be the core of sight, because when a person closes their eyes, it's as if there is still a sense of there being something. It's not like everything disappears, even though sensory-wise, visually it disappears, but it's as if there's still one's own presence. So it seems to me that in front of our eyes, we need to learn to function through visible movement, and as a visible mover, this is where the ego is coming. Behind our eyes, we need to be able to also relate, be able to, how would I say it? To notice the content of the mind. You see, there is three categories when you look at the mind. There is the mental faculties, where it's as if how the brain is leading to projection. Then there is classifications of mental phenomena, the sort of types of inner events that happen, for example, the distinction between the imagination and memory, and then there is, you can say, mental content, right? Now, this mental content is wondering where imagination and memory are happening, or what are they in some sense. You see, there has been moments in my life where I felt like, am I alive in two dimensions, or am I alive in one? What is this imagination that happens, right? It's as if the person is walking on the street, going to buy groceries, and then in that 10 minutes they think about who they were in the past, who they want to be in the future. All the advertisements they see, it projects a sort of self-desire, self-simulation of having a relationship with that content. So it's as if while we are living our outer life, the inner life is taking place, and the inner life has permissions of function or verbs applied to it that in the outer realm they can't. For example, in that 10 minutes of walking in the grocery store, a person can see someone, let's say see someone attractive, and then their mind projects like the future of themselves with that person. Do you see what I mean? It's as if the mind is living the life over the body's life. Now, the exploration of the mind is very fascinating because just to paint more of a context, for example, you look at shamans or Native American culture, and what you see is in some sense a relationship with plant life and trying to use plant life to get a vision. It was as if after, I'll say it like this, it's as if it's considered that back in the day, during the, let's say, tribal phase of society for the natives, it was as if the child would get to a certain age and then they would have a sort of vision quest, and this vision quest would involve the person ceremonially behaving in a certain way and then taking this plant and having a psychedelic transformation that would reveal to that individual the meaning of their life or whatnot. You know, you can look at it also in other ways where there have been yogis that have gone into caves and they've sat down and they've been in samadhi, and it's as if they've kind of logged out of the objective, let's say, server, and they've gone into the subjective server. It's as if if right now we say that it's like 50% outer life plus 50% inner life, that those yogis that went to samadhi, it was as if like beyond 90% inner life, you know, and 10% outer life. I have closed my eyes and wondered about what is going on with the mind, how the mind is happening when the body is not the focus. And what tends to happen is that a person is watching events, and these events give emotion if you identify with them. So it's as if behind your eyes there's a film strip, you know, a sort of cinematic experience happening. Now the person's like there's an invisible, again the invisible mover, there's an invisible watcher watching the film of the mind, and if this person in the cinema identifies with the film, they get emotional, and so they become that thought, right? So it's as if there is vision moving in another way that human beings have access to, where it's considered lesser species don't. And of course, the whole interest for this episode really is that it's unknown, because if we all knew what was going on, there'd be no reason to talk about it, right? And I feel that it's like not only the world is vast, but if it's an implication that the mind is another dimension, like René Descartes' mind-body dualism, which points towards a non-physical, I don't know if I can even say behaviorology, but like a non-physical sort of awareness to movement, or movement of awareness. It's pretty much like a cinema. Imagination is like a cinema. Creative people are people who notice that inner cinema and they in some sense act upon it or bring it about. Think of it this way, that inventors to me are some of the most creative people, and an inventor sees the possibility of an invention consider that where the inventor gets what we call the idea of the invention, if we consider that another dimension, it seems like there is multiple things beyond the framework of reality, beyond what we consider normal, taking place. And so it's as if people are not, think of it this way, there is no normal, or the absence of normality, abnormal. There is just a creature that has access to a physical sight, like its sight has a physical dimension, and then behind its eyes, as it closes its eyes, that physical dimension is so malleable that a person can see someone who looks like someone they know and think that it's their friend. We have young children playing with toys. What is that? When a child plays with a toy, or let's say an action figure or something, that child has imbued life. That child is being that action figure in its mind. So what this implies is that there's an intelligence here that sees what's happening outside, and in some sense either makes that into itself, or there is something it has considered in the inner realms and it makes what's outside into that, right? For example, when you look at language, we looked at objects and we connected them to symbols, which is really what letters are, symbols on a piece of paper. Now, let's say a person is inside a room, and a physical room, where it's not like the sky infinite, they're inside a room. So they open their eyes as a child is born in a room, and that child notices that room after, let's say, many years. So that child, in some sense, looks at the world, and the world is a physical room to it. Now, that child, that person closes their eyes. And when they close their eyes, they can visualize the same room. Up until this point, we can say that there is still a visual of a room in the mind. But when that room changes, it's as if the mind is a room that doesn't have walls. So the exploration of the mind is like exploring a dimension with infinite permission. There has been moments where I have just walked outside and I've wondered, what if I had never existed? And then there's moments where I think about it as if I'm wondering about an unborn state. And then there's moments where I think, okay, let's say I died and I was standing beside my own grave. It's as if it's like the mystery of that makes me wonder, as if could there be this whole time a dimension that we're all in. It's as if we have logged into two servers, the body server and the mind server, and so the body server, we think that the mind is dependent to the body. There has to be a brain that projects the mind. But I would say if there is a chance that there has to be a mind before the brain, so it means that there has to be an awareness, there has to be a field of intelligence before something can move in that field of intelligence. And if we are the field of intelligence, this may surpass humanization, it may surpass human ideology. So the question of where else can sight go, sight is starting for a human, physical human being, and as the human being realizes it is within a non-physical dimension. This non-physical dimension, going over or going beyond the idea of a person, it would mean presence or multi-presence. So I'm kind of suggesting that it's like in the middle of a search, or imagine sight is starting for a traveler or for an explorer, and this explorer is exploring and reaches a point where it cannot be an explorer anymore, but there is still attention moving. So this means that it's like we're wondering about how local the source of attention is, and if it is non-local, then what has been going on here? Because if there is a state where the human ideology is not present, then in some sense it is surpassing all human ideologies. You see, in history, what we see is that there was a phase of object worship. People were looking for truth, and they looked at an object and they're like, this object is my truth. We call that idol worship. Then we went to a phase where it wasn't just an object, now it became subject worship. And I call that ideal worship. And right now in the world, that's what's going on. Even though we think we're people and we're learning things that are new, really what's going on, it's like there's just this attention as if we are like a drone camera for a higher dimension, and so this attention is piloting, and it's like a bird going from branch to branch to branch, but the branch is not the bird. Do you see? So this means sight travels or starts as a known object and an unknown subject. We go from the unknown subject into the unknown. And the unknown is a suggestion where if there isn't a mover, if there isn't a person, or a personality, then what is moving or what is here? It's kind of like there was a man by the name of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he had a disciple also by the name of Henry David Thoreau. And this man started this movement called American Transcendentalism, and he had, I believe, a Christian background. And in his mentality, though, he would say, go into nature, and everybody has a soul, and your soul is the extension of the divine will, the will of the universe. And he would say a person's relationship with their own soul is in some sense a person's relationship with the universal will or the notion of God. Now, I feel that if the body, let's say the body passes away, transitions, the body dissolves, so there is no more body. Now the mind, which has been subjects, we feel these subjects have been kept specifically by the brain, but in some sense, let's say with the brain leaving, the subjects go away. I'm just trying to point out that we are masquerading as subjects in the outer realms and in society, but the subject and object are being viewed simultaneously in an unknown way. So all methods, all physical methods alone are incomplete, and all subjective methods alone are incomplete. Do you see? And it's as if there has to be a sort of awareness that can notice both movements. Now, let's say a person realizes that there is a known self and an unknown self. The known self is the created, the unknown self is the creator. So it would probably, and keep in mind this episode, I'm just keeping it as a sort of brainstorming exploration episode, so keep that in mind whoever's listening. It's a framework. I think this is where all of it goes to. We are doing things and we are being things. We're being an object and we're doing things as an object. Now, we can also see this for a subject as well. But I would say that when it comes to doing, there's known ways things, there's known actions, and then we have unknown actions. Unknown actions are what hasn't been done yet or what we don't know is happening. And when we look at the being, there is known being. We know that we're being here right now. Even if a person doesn't move and their eyes open, they know there's something being here, some sort of energy that's intelligent. And so there's unknown being. Now, this unknown being guys, I'm really trying to think here, trying to consider here what I can say that I haven't said before in other episodes. I've just come to the point where I'm like, okay, there's a doer, there's a being, there's a verb, there's a noun, there's a known verb, unknown verb, there's a known noun, unknown noun. The known noun is pretty much the photographs of knowledge. The known verb is like the direct experience we have. The unknown verb is all the different ways that we can move, which we are not, or that is the world is moving that we are not. And when it comes to, or maybe we are and we don't know, and then when it comes to the unknown being is like, what, I don't know what else I can say other than it's an attributeless watcher. Right? It's as if, like, what can you say about somebody staring at fish in an aquarium, imagine that person thinks it's the fish and thinks it has the body of the fish or has the mind of the fish and it's limited to that aquarium, and realizes that the whole time it was watching life from outside of that dimension of life. Right? So this brings one to the unknown, and when one comes to the unknown, what known property can be given to it, right? How can you be a known self anymore? How can you be a known world? So it's unknown, the least thing we can say, it's either an unknown noun or an unknown verb. And so this unknown noun and unknown verb are also the same. They're the same in the same space of the unknown. So I would say probably the where sight can go is get to the edge of its visible perception, and then probably just serve the unknown. That means either we think of the body as an Iron Man suit and think of like the subject of self and the world and all that to be another Iron Man suit, an Iron Man suit inside an Iron Man suit. Now, as a species, through our evolutionary biology, we woke up from the first Iron Man suit, and so that's why we use the term minds in 2021. Now, if we are to wake up from the second Iron Man suit, it's as if then we find Tony Stark, right? And that was the notion of the Atman, you know, in some sense the soul of man. We come to the soul. And so if we are considering that it's neither an object or subject, that means we're all living lives that have nothing to do with objects and subjects. That means this whole time that we have been alive, if there's a possibility that there's something more than the object and subject, it transcends both of them. So Tony Stark doesn't have his Tony Stark skin is not like the Iron Man suit's surface. Do you see what I mean? So it's a completely different texture of reality, right? It could be that the Iron Man suit in some sense still looks like Tony Stark, like it's following, it's like the suit, right? So the suit is suited to the person wearing it, right? So it could be that the way a body moves in this life and the way a mind animates that body in this life, it's adjusted to a mystery, you know, a mysterious self, or a self that in no way can Iron Man suits fathom, right? And the thing is after Tony Stark steps out of the Iron Man suit, it does work that the Iron Man suit is not necessary for. So this kind of implies a sort of three lives in the process, as if every conscious creature is living three lives, okay? The first life, it's your physical life where survival is key, and also community comes to you for your second life, which is your mind's life, okay? The subjective life of the person. Right now, me talking, it's as if I'm just this attention and subjects are arising to me as I look at the cinematic perceptions behind my eyes. Pretty much I'm just someone giving words to what I can see and what I see moving behind my eyes. Right now I'm just sitting at a table in front of a computer. So there is the life of the object, there's the life of the subject, and then there's just life, right? So the third life is something way beyond the object and subject, and it's kind of like expecting a machine to understand how a natural human being perceives life, right? Even if we come up with advanced AI, there will be no way to teach it. The AI, the best strategy that, let's say, robotic life in the future has to kind of mimic the human soul is to copy-paste human behaviors and then try to somehow fathom or try to build up dimensions of perceptions that way. Now, there was a quote I mentioned earlier where it says, desirelessness is the only food that helps. This was by a man, what's his name? Siddhara Meshwar Maharaj. And he says, desirelessness is the only food that helps turn towards the reality and attain self-realization. So it's as if he's saying when the desire for living in the Iron Man suit naturally, let's say, goes away, right? When that desirelessness arises, what remains is the reality. So it's as if when human beings have, let's say, whatever intelligence is here that is being us or being the individual in the moment, let's say it lived from a yogic perspective or Buddhic perspective, it realized it had been reincarnating millions and millions and millions of years. You know, if you're a chemist, like the periodic table is reincarnating into people, but I would say it's as if we're reincarnating stardust. But let's say that the mind's life, the domain of, let's say, subjectivity, let's say the person realized that they have been animating and they have been pretty much painting endless artworks of memories for some sort of universal space. Now let's say after they realize that they have been just playing the game of objects and the game of subjects for a very long time. So what happens when a person is in like the same cycle after a while? They just want to get out of it, right? And because we have many people just in history and even alive now who are treating reality as a sort of simulation to escape from or transcend out of, I would say that this is a suggestion that the game of objects and subjects has reached its end. Like we have played that game too long. Now, this could imply that either a sort of capability arises to grasp that on third life that we're all living that's beyond an object and subject, beyond the objective life and the subjective life. For now, let's call it the unknown life. Because the subject can be known, the object can be known, but the viewer of both of them cannot be known. Like literally, there is no knower. It's not a subject that knows and it's not an object that knows. Right, so that third life, either I feel it is something where it's like the dimension grows into it, or it's gifted somehow to the dimension, to this world where we suddenly have a game to play that goes beyond objects and subjects, or we suddenly realize that the room of objects and the room of subjects, that means the body's room and the mind's room, are just not the main room, and there's a greater event going on beyond physical life. Now that greater event, it's as if like Tony Stark inside an Iron Man suit, and imagine like his wife is having a dinner party, right? And so he has the suit on, so what he does is he has this sort of nostalgic calling to finish the work of the Iron Man suit and then take off the Iron Man suit and go and continue that third life. That third life it's on its own. It's like a sort of naked self where there's no layers of clothing on it. There's no more a suit. So I feel that the attention is multi-dimensionally present. And when the focus goes from the object to the subject, which is the point of concentration and meditation, a single pointed mindfulness. And so beyond the single point of the subject, we realize we are the space, and so the life of space. It surpasses storification. It's as if when I was younger, I was very convinced that the work of one's life force is just in what they see and where they see. But now I'm being more convinced that it's as if the candle is inside a sphere, and outside of the sphere there is no candle of consciousness. And so it's as if having an ability to return to the unknown, where everything in life its meaning comes from the known. And And I feel that there was this notion of karma yoga, and because we can't just exit, it's as if we are inside the Iron Man suit. So it's as if while we're inside the Iron Man suit, we use it. And perhaps once the work, let's call it the work of nature, is completed through us, or the logos has in some sense held the microphone enough, then it's as if the desire to desire leaves. And so there may come an approach to freedom that is as if like there's a freedom that's conditional and there's a freedom that's unconditional. You know, and you hear like ancient texts, you know, talk about like the eternity of the soul, or even religions talking about paradise, but that still is conditional. And the question of where else can sight go, I mean, it's like who is looking? And then where is this sight arising from? And then if it goes beyond location, we become not the seer of the seen, S-E-E-N, we become the seer of the seer, S-E-E-R, and the seer of the seer. You know what it is? It's like we don't become eternal, we become an unconditional being. You know what it is? If you think of these as two urges, there is, for example, in Gnosticism, like a notion of, like, think of it as if like God is being seen as the administrator of the server, and then there's the demiurge, which is being seen as the moderator of the server. It still has certain privileges of the admin, but it is not the administrator. Similarly, it's like the notion of the logos, the notion of, let's say, the demigod level of perception. It's as if that is still in the domain of the moderator. But the moderator is being a moderator because its focus is on the verb and being, you can say, it's as if the how would I say it? Action-oriented, verb-oriented perception leads towards the, let's say, the dimension of the moderator, and a sort of noun-oriented but unconditional noun-oriented approach takes us towards the administrator. In this book called the Bhagavad Gita, there is there's a passage where it says all those people who follow demigods, they come towards the same place, but they come to it in an unauthorized way. Do you know? So it's as if man's relationship with the administrator of reality, or the unknown source of it. It's as if the body's life has access to the individual memory from birth to death. The mind's life has access to, let's say, the origin of the universe, to the end of the universe, or the beginning of the cosmos towards its end. And the third life has no memory, no visualization, no history. So it's as if we realized the eternity is moving in the temporal, or is the temporal. It's as if somebody once said, change is the only thing that doesn't change. And so it's as if our changeless life, because right now we identify with the object, so there's fear of death. We identify with the mind, so there's the fear of not transcending. There's a fear of transcendence. But it's as if we have reached a point, maybe in human history, that these creatures on this rock didn't expect that in the middle of their efforts as individuals to survive, what has been surviving from the beginning is not an individual. Do you know the implication of this? Imagine like a child, and I'm perceiving this in the future, it may be clear. Right now I am, again, an explorer. It's like I'm a human being, I've seen certain things, and then these eyes are standing in the moment. And the winds of evolution come and go. And you don't know, guys, how many times, even though I give these talks and there's a lot of language involved, but you might not believe how much my nature has been content with watching life. Because when you realize you're not the body, or let me say it this way, when you realize that you are the whole moment which the body is a part of, then you are just being. It's like the admin is like how the universe is being, and the moderator is how the universe is doing, And so the moment we choose to act, it's as if from the yogic perspective, samsara appears. But the moment, there is no getting out of karma. It's just you realize the driver in the car, in this rent-a-car, is not the car. I think where this in society will have, in global society will have an influence, is not only in the value systems and our perception of the hierarchies of society. It's as if for the first time, I think in human history, we return back to the first page of history. It's like a reset, a global psychological reset, and then the restart of that reset. The context it arises in is no longer of those who die, but those who are endlessly just traveling. We are like unknown energy that is just moving in the space-time continuum. And so I would say, they had this idea of the chakras. One's relationship with energy surpasses one's relationship with ideology. So it could be that when we went to explore the mind's room, we came to realize that what is a location is just an energetic being. And so if a person wants to have an experience that surpasses location, they require to wonder about their relationship of how attention and energy is being. Sorry guys, my attention, I was typing something for the chat section. Interesting comments there. You know, this episode, the topic is focused towards a mystical direction. So really, when you look at the physical, when you look at like the objective life, there's so many variations. There's 8 billion different types of DNA ways attention is moving. And to expect 8 billion different creatures doing different things to have one outcome, and that outcome to also be perfect, is impossible. There is a quote from Salvador Dali where he says, do not fear perfection, you will never reach it. And what he means is that any system you look at, if you are the creator of that system, you can always update it. You see, there's some people who have writer's block, and you can say there's some people who their creativity is actually endlessly going, and so they have to cut it off at some point to kind of stabilize or shape the artwork. You see guys, it all changes. It all changes. And we are travelers in the world. There's this Sufi story. I'll just make it quick. Pretty much there's this merchant, he goes to this town back in the day, and he gives this this person who doesn't have money an object, just out of his goodwill. And so the person's like, all right, man, I can't pay you, but I'll tell you there's a wise person, an enlightened person. In the Sufi tradition, they would say those who have the pearl. There's someone with a unique awareness in town. And go and talk to this guy. So the merchant goes and sees this house, which is such a very simple house at the end of this town. And he knocks on the door. This Sufi dervish, this man, you can say is a mystic, opens the door, and so he welcomes the merchant in, and the merchant goes inside and he sits down and he sees, and the Sufi dervish is preparing tea, and so this merchant is sitting there, and he looks and he sees this guy only has a mat, he has a lamp, and he has a kettle, and he has a lantern. It's like that's all he has, something very simple, and he looks at the person, and he's a merchant, of course, and he looks at him and says, hey, where's your furniture? Where's all your furniture, sage? And the dervish completes, pouring the tea in the cup, and then suddenly, with a very intense tone, he was very welcoming at the beginning when he invited the person, with a very intense tone, he says, where's your furniture? And the merchant looks at him, kind of getting offended, and he's like, what do you mean, where's my furniture? I'm a traveler, I don't have furniture, And that's where suddenly the Sufi smiles. This is the moral of the story, and he says, me too, I'm a traveler. That means beyond what the relationship my body has with the world, and beyond the relationship my mind has with the world. It's as if all of these, as Sri Ramana Maharshi says, all that you have learned, there will come a day where all you have learned will be forgotten. And so it's as if he's saying that he is an attention traveling the realm, right? So there's a completely different identification, because if you're not an object and you're not a subject, it's as if then what is the problem with how objects and subjects happen, right? This is the core, this is the mysteries of spirituality. But in the chat section, somebody was talking about capitalism. I will share some perspectives on it, and in no way I'm a political science professor, but I have certain ideas and my own opinions on it. For me, I see life in the sense that human beings cultivated a psychology that has made their desires increase. So just like how people want an object quicker, or they want something, or they want their Amazon packages to be delivered in a quicker way, it's as if, how would I say it? It's as if we are having more of an urge like that. Just a second, please. Okay, I'm back, guys. So the talk was going towards capitalism. Let me see. It's a part of our evolution. It's part of the desire of the human being, and it is a system that has taken place. Now, when you look at the system, because we have adjusted to this sort of lifestyle where it's the information age, many people require technology. Like, technology is a part of people's lives. So, in some sense, capitalism is advancing technology. It is also allowing various human beings to start new initiatives. And of course, when we look at issues with capitalism, it's just the mistreatment of human beings. That means if there was a sort of system, global financial system, where every person had enough for their physiological survival, with the consideration of, the arbitrary perspective on money. So of course, the future, just like you see a broken car, you can see a fixed car. Now, the thing is that in the future, a lot of what we see and what we're considering capitalism is probably going to be automated. That means right now, many human beings have jobs, but when robots come in to the picture, a factory owner may be like, why should I create jobs for people to, have money to live in some sense? I'll just, in some sense, get a bunch of robots and just pay one giant electric bill. future of capitalism is machines doing what the body is doing, and people will be left as minds. People underestimate the role of creativity in the future. If technology gets rid of many jobs, people will be left into a novel state where it's as if what we can do that machines can't will have more value than what we do that machines can't do. Do you know? There's so many people that are alive right now and they blame civilization, but I'll tell you, it's a prototype. You know, the world we see right now, it's like so far what we could do or what has been done, right? And if anybody truly cares about updating a system, you don't want to destroy a system, you want to update it. Do you know, this is the issue that a lot of people have with capitalism. Do you know, when there's a virus, if you see it as a virus, you want to destroy it, but then you're taking away, you know, but if you shift from the virus analogy, it's as if it's a system that provides advantages and disadvantages. Now the issue is that the disadvantages for the individual human being is way more, and of course there is this whole desire of the planet to, in some sense, wear the newest thing, have the newest thing, and all this. Like that's, you can say that's always there. If like there was a tribe that sharpened their spears and another tribe hadn't, so suddenly it's like they would update, right? So it's like it's such a complex scenario, and when we look at the outer realms, that it's like, again, a system, a multi-dimensional landscape where the system, many things are happening in it at the same time. There was a time where people had cars and cars were dangerous. They didn't have seatbelts, you know. Then we updated it to have seatbelts. So I would say when you look at the world, it's just missing updates, and people, the issue is with I wouldn't say capitalism is the problem, because capitalism is a system and various people are entering it, right? I would say it's education, and it's really the sum total of the desires of all human beings. You know, there may be this notion that, of course, there are some people, you know, that have more power than other people, but I think whoever you are, wherever you are, after some point you realize it's temporary, you know. And so if you identify more than yourself, usually people who seek power, they care for legacy, but many don't realize that the greatest legacy is collective efficiency. You know, and it's so much easier to complain about a system. You know, it's easy, like you can complain about anything, but to see its flaws and want to update it or find models, to create models that can update it, this surpasses just an emotional outburst. Do you see? Because everybody can get emotional about anything. You know, a person can look at their own lifestyle and wonder as if, why have I been living like this whole time? Isn't it easy, you know, for me to change? So you see, there's so many dimensions to it, you know. The thing is that I don't see capitalism as an issue. I see it's not lack of update, perhaps more of an issue. Do you see? Because these are all developments, right? There was a time where we didn't have the concept of time, we developed it. Do you know? These are all like phases of, you can say, the results of natural beings. Do you know? A person can look at a system and be like, oh man, this is so unnatural. But I'll tell you, that nature led to that unnatural. And so what are the options? We either leave the room, or if we are in the room, we update the room. You know? Where else can sight go? And what else can just one person among 8 billion say? You know, guys, to be honest, I feel I was too tired to even share this episode. I probably shouldn't have shared it, but anyways, what's been done is done, like capitalism. But I'll say this, that there are mysteries that surpass what we can see. And if we realize that the third life surpasses the movements of an object or the movement in subjects, it could be that emotions are a clue to the relationship of the invisible mover with the visible mover. You know, I think when it comes to philosophy, that it's very important to have an attitude that there is more potential than what has actualized. Who knows that in the future there may be children born that they revolutionize our perception of all the systems that are in play. You know, when like right now my eyes are open and I notice that I'm a physical entity, as a physical creature, what else can one do? You move what you physically are, right? So this movement, you know, it's just the adjustment of this movement. You know, it's as if like there's a space prior to any decision being made, and anybody aware of that space has access to multiple decisions. It's easy to hate what we don't understand. This is happening all the time. But if we were to truly understand it, like you could see like a capitalism, even though it is, think of it this way, it's like all structures take an effort. There is an exchange. It's just that it's not an equal exchange. People may think, you know, that's what Karl Marx felt. You know, it's not that factories were bad. You know, it was just that how human beings were treated, you know, because society has to grow somehow, right? I mean, if everybody was in nature, right, it's like having an urge to do something else than what we were doing before is advancement. My eyes have found themselves in a world where from the beginning of my life I have tried to know, and all the mysteries go back to an unknown watcher. Which means in some sense there is beyond the life of an object and beyond the life of a subject and the relationship of self and world in each of those lives. There is no more. There's nothing to do, and there is nothing to be. We step into the domain of unconditional being and unconditional doing. So it's as if minds are like drops that they will evaporate in the future, or they were drops that merge into the ocean. So what if I was to somehow conclude something about this shaky episode, is that the site that was wondering where it could go realized it's not location based, and so it's as if energy is its own command. Think of it this way, that there's two modes of life in the world. One is you have been already created, the conditions are set, you open your eyes in the world. The other is you create the world, right? So we are kind of divided between being collective creators or the individually created. You know, it's like I could totally have this attitude, yeah man, you know, the mind is just, it's just a hallucination of chemicals and everything is meaningless, but because there is something moving here, something that coordinates its movement, it's as if that's where the mystery comes, right? When you see, for example, a remote controlled car or a remote controlled drone, right, it's like it's being controlled from somewhere. The controller is somewhere where the car isn't, but it receives the signal. So it could be that this whole time, we think we're individuals that are associating with object and subject, but we're actually, the controller is not here. As if life was seen as a multiplayer online video game where every day a person wakes up, they're logging into an elemental map instead of a pixel-based map. A pixelated map, they're entering an elemental map, and there is quests to do. These quests are like a person's life purpose. It's as if like when a person goes towards a, let's say, religious institution or a financial institution, in order for them to be rewarded in that institution, they need to do certain things, certain actions. So in some sense, it's literally like a multiplayer online game where when we sleep, we log off. When we wake up, we log into, right? And so some people have realized, all right, there's quests that it's like you can, that are there from before, and you can also create quests here, right? So it's as if the future is the eyes of the creative. So what it means is that whether through cyberspace we access this, where we act like gods, in cyberspace a person, let's say, comes home from work, puts on like virtual reality, and they're like flying in the clouds, or they can create their own world and go live in the world they created, So the thing is that we are all now wondering as if, wait a minute, what if the person playing this video game steps away from this main screen? That means the person stops playing this game. And the biggest clue, I would say one of the most mysterious clues, this is a very abstract idea to share, but it's like, I think about it in the sense that, let's say there were these three, let's say gods, like Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. Okay, Brahman being the creator archetype, Vishnu being the maintainer archetype, Shiva being the destroyer archetype. So imagine three gods, okay, or let me say it this way, imagine there's three people, and these people, they create a sphere just hovering in the middle of the air in a dark room, but all three of them are watching the sphere. And they put ants on the sphere. The ants have nowhere to jump to or something like that. And so imagine these ants suddenly became conscious that they're just floating in the middle of this room. And imagine like there's three people who are like watching the sphere in the middle of the air. Now, if this sphere was placed, let's say, on a shelf that was connected to a wall, the ants could somehow, let's say, human beings with space shuttles, they reach the wall of the universe and they completely notice that it was another room. So it could be that I'm just saying the fact that we're just on a rock floating in the middle of the nowhere is like a strange clue. A strange clue. Or a mystical clue that it's as if the edge of this system was not meant to be seen. And when we wonder why shouldn't the edge of the system to be seen, it could be, again, something to do with knowledge. Sometimes from a theological framework, I ask, where is Earth? Where did God create Earth? Where? Right? Because it seems that God was somewhere, which was we consider it to be the heavens, right? Where God was, and then God creates man, and then God sends man to Earth, right? When Adam makes a mistake. Is a simulation in heaven, maybe. Either way, guys, there's many ways to bring the world into structure through language. In this evening's episode, I have to apologize to the audience. I don't know, I think there's too much fatigue. But if we don't care for the future, we cannot see it, And destroying something is the worst approach when you can rebuild something. It could be that the eyes of our eyes are everywhere at once. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and much blessings and namaste. Okay, so guys, I was going to end off, but there's comments in the chat section, so I'll open it up to if anybody has questions and whatnot. Okay, guys, I'll say a final statement and I'll end the episode. we're in location. We create location. We experience the creation of location inside location and various locations through the creator view. And beyond language, it's a world happening at once. Language may create the desire for an endless search, but contentment with our own presence as energy, that is where life's ultimate reality resides. The center of the mind's room is the whole moment being. So our voices come and go, our eyes change. The unknown is the unknown. What greater statement can be said? Thank you for listening. Guys, I keep wanting to end off and then a comment appears. Woozy says, is enlightenment the state of mind in which one is fully conscious of the nature of reality? I would say it's the state of mind where the instantaneous unknown presence of that consciousness is the ultimate reality. That's the nature of reality. Even right now, as I'm looking at it, sure, there's this notion of enlightenment, but if you wonder about what else can happen to this attention that is here, it can interact separately with everything, or it can collectively be it. I would say when you realize that your real eyes are not eyes, it's as if before human beings spoke what truth, it's all being. And enlightenment, they say, it's like wondering about how the light in your eyes is being everything that you're seeing. When nowhere and what is now here are the same. In the middle of the search for enlightenment, the person who wants enlightenment is suddenly realizes it's a presence. We are present. We are a momentary presence beyond our personality. So experiencing this, I would say, is the fulfillment of the objective and subjective life. And of course, there is the saying, they say, what does a person do before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What does a person do after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. It's like if there is a truth, it must be true now. That means whatever illusion there is, or even if there's a projector, the projector is projecting the artificial from a real place. So the illusion is kept by the truth. So just the absence of identification with the illusion, it's like, what are you? What are you now? The eyes know, or I would say, in one talk of mine, I said your moment of being is your only guru, and it has been with you from the beginning. That's why they call it self-realization. There is something that is true here, and it's like we haven't noticed it. Anyways, guys, I think I can't be much more helpful in this episode. Thank you for listening. I'll be on Discord a little bit.